On September 3rd, 1783, the American Revolutionary War officially comes to an end with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. The relationship between Britain and its 13 North American colonies began to deteriorate after the French and Indian War ended in 1763. The conflict was part of a larger worldwide conflict known as the 7 Years' War. Britain won the war, but was heavily in debt because of it. To help pay off those debts, Britain levied a series of taxes on its American colonies. The colonists pushed back, claiming that Britain had no right to tax them, since the colonies had no representation in Parliament. Protests and boycotts forced the British government to repeal many of these measures, but in Boston, events like the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and the battles of Lexington and Concord pushed the two sides to the brink of all-out war. In July 1776, the Continental Congress declared the colonies' independence. 5 years later, the war was all but over when the French helped the Americans capture Cornwallis's army at Yorktown. The Continental Congress named a delegation to negotiate the peace agreement with Britain that included Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and future Chief Justice John Jay. Henry Laurens, former president of the Continental Congress and father of Alexander Hamilton's friend John Laurens, eventually joined the delegation as well. Henry Laurens had been captured by the British in 1780 while serving as minister to the Netherlands, and was imprisoned in the Tower of London. Laurens was exchanged for British General Cornwallis in a prisoner swap, freeing him to take part in the talks. Negotiations began in 1782 in Paris, but the U.S. delegation, which was distrustful of the French, opted to negotiate separately with the British delegation, made up of David Hartley and Richard Oswald. Oswald was, ironically, a former business partner of Henry Laurens, and had helped negotiate Laurens's release from the Tower of London. During the talks, Franklin demanded that Britain hand over Canada. Britain refused, but the U.S. did gain fishing rights in Canadian waters, and enough new territory south of Canada's border to double the new nation's size. Britain also agreed to formally recognize America's independence and remove its troops from U.S. territory. Both sides promised to fulfill their financial obligations to their creditors and to release prisoners of war. America also agreed that it would earnestly recommend that its 13 states restore property seized from Loyalists. By the way, the states ignored this recommendation and retained Loyalist property without compensation. The U.S. and Britain signed a preliminary agreement in November 1782. Then on September 3, 1783, at Paris's Hotel York, the United States, Britain, France, and Spain signed the final treaty, which was ratified by the Continental Congress a few months later. Pennsylvania-born Benjamin West created the famous 1783 painting of the Treaty of Paris, which includes each member of the American delegation: John Jay, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Henry Laurens. West's painting also includes Franklin's grandson, William Temple Franklin, who was in Paris assisting his grandfather during the peace negotiations. Laurens and the younger Franklin were not actually present at the signing, but West still chose to include them. Benjamin Franklin was the only U.S. delegate who did not pose for West in person. However, since Franklin was an international celebrity by 1793, finding an accurate image of the statesman to use as a model was not difficult for West. In fact, in 1816, years after Franklin's death, West painted one of the most famous depictions of Franklin, entitled Benjamin Franklin Drawing Electricity from the Sky, which can be found today in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Back in 1770, West had also painted the death of General Wolfe, which is probably the best-known painting from the French and Indian War. West's painting of the Treaty of Paris was never finished, but why? Well, Britain's delegation refused to pose for West, apparently having no desire to commemorate the Empire's defeat. so West opted to leave it unfinished rather than guess at the British delegation's likenesses. For me, the fact that West's painting is incomplete makes it even better. Although it would have been nice if West had finished John Adams' pants. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1260, Egypt's Mamluk Sultanate defeats the invading Mongol army at the Battle of Ain Jalut. In 1777, the American flag is flown in battle for the first time at Couch's Bridge, Maryland. In 1838, Frederick Douglass escaped slavery by traveling from Baltimore to New York using false papers. In 1939, 2 days after the invasion of Poland, Britain and France declare war on Nazi Germany. In 2004, a hostage crisis at a Russian school ends with 331 dead, most of them children. In 2017, a 4,000-pound World War II bomb is defused at a construction site in Frankfurt, Germany. In 2024, lightning strikes Rome's Arch of Constantine, damaging the 1,700-year-old monument. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. How many black students famously integrated Little Rock Central High School by attending during the 1957-58 school year? 6, 7, 8, or 9? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right next time on Today in History. You made it through Today in History. Nice work. Now treat yourself. Click the video on the right for what happened yesterday in history. Still can't get enough? The link on the left's got the whole playlist buffet. Want to make history a daily habit? Click my face in the middle to subscribe.